Modern true crime media often relies on a rapid-fire payoff. A crime is discovered, a suspect is identified, and the mystery snaps tight by the end of the hour. But real investigative journalism almost never follows that trajectory. David Grann represents the methodical alternative to this approach. He builds historical chronicles by spending months or years piecing together fragments others have overlooked. These investigations rarely start with a dramatic revelation or a confession. They begin with a vacuum, a specific, identifiable hole in the historical record where information should be, but isn't. The process requires looking past the loud, obvious questions and focusing instead on the silence. It's about recognizing the exact moment the official story stops providing answers. The starting point is usually a single detail that doesn't fit. It could be an anomaly buried in a file dated around February 4th, 2008, a small inconsistency that breaks the established pattern. At any given moment, the daily news cycle is a wall of sound. In early 2008, the world's attention was fixed on a historic election and a shifting global economy. In an environment this saturated, a tiny, contradictory thread in an old file is almost impossible to hear. That thread might be a date that doesn't match a public record, or a witness statement that contradicts a physical law. It's a quiet error, often 50 pages deep into a report that hasn't been opened in half a century. That detail acts as a splinter. It makes it impossible to accept the official narrative, demanding an explanation that the current record cannot provide. Pulling that thread is the only way forward. The investigator must follow that one inconsistency until the entire false history begins to give way. This is where the work becomes physical. It means traveling to remote archives and tracking down sources who spent decades trying to forget. Verification requires cross-referencing these chaotic timelines. Every red node is exunterbiction, where two official documents tell different stories about the same event. Frequently, the trail ends in a void. A foundational folder is missing, and the investigation effectively stops. This forced pause requires a pivot. If the evidence isn't where it's supposed to be, the investigator has to start looking at why it was removed and what that absence reveals. Dead ends are a functional part of the process. They eliminate the easy, incorrect assumptions, narrowing the path toward a more difficult truth. The pivot leads back to the primary documents. This time, the investigator applies a different logic, looking for patterns that weren't visible before. This is the moment of clarity. Seemingly unrelated archival records slowly align into a logical progression. As the points connect, the records form a rigid structure. Individual fragments of evidence become a locked chain, where each fact reinforces the next. When this new evidence shows that a suspect's alibi is physically impossible based on bank records, the original story loses its authority. The weight of the documented facts simply replaces the previous version of events. The breakthrough suggests that the evidence wasn't actually missing, it was just waiting for a framework that could make sense of it. The final stage is the translation. The investigator must turn this massive technical web of evidence into a narrative that is accessible and human. This level of dedication has a transformative effect. A single person's work acts like a drop of ink in a pool, slowly spreading until it has changed the color and clarity of the entire historical record. There is a massive scale difference between the solitary researcher and the final public narrative. One represents the grueling reality of the archive, and the other represents the restored history that results from it. Investigative work at this level ensures that even when a story is buried or neglected for a century, the physical evidence remains. It acts as a permanent record, ensuring that once a truth is recovered, it can no longer be easily ignored.